What to do with all of your old plastic nursery pots. Aside from donating them, which I did here to the Native Plant Network, we can actually make some pretty out-of-the-box, stylish home and garden decor. Having these plastic beauties lying around is a fantastic opportunity to upcycle and get creative. Today we're transforming black plastic nursery pots into amazing home and garden decor. Let's get started. Along with the plastic nursery pots, we'll be using a boatload of torn up paper strips from newsprint as well as magazines. After prepping newsprint strips of various sizes, it's time to begin mixing up small batches of the mortar mix. I am using Flexbond thin set. What you want to do is put a little bit into a container and add a little bit of water, stirring vigorously until there's no lumps. The first batch that I'm mixing has a consistency of heavy cream. Begin by dunking your paper strips liberally in the mortar mix and layering over the plastic pot. Using the mortar mache also allows us to put the piece outside and not have to worry about the planter being in the elements. On each of the planters that we're making today, we're putting on 7 layers of mortar mache and letting it dry. Put this little cap. I'm going to give our little planter a base. I love having elevated planters. Yes, I am upcycling my husband's CPAP hose here. Feel free to use a large rope for this part if you don't have one of those hoses hanging around your home. This is an excellent way of upcycling that rubber. Using a clamp, attach the hose or the rope at the top and make your way around the circumference of the planter and make sure that it's nice and snug. And what you want to do is just mortar mache the strips of paper to anchor the tube in place and continue around the planter, making sure, as I said, it's super snug, as I did here. The value of working on 3 or 4 planters at a time is you create a creative flow as well, and there's zero waste. While one is drying or at a certain stage, you can work on others and you keep on moving on and so forth. Moving on to our next planter, what we're going to do is mix up some mortar mix that is more like a brownie batter consistency. Using a wooden popsicle stick, I generously spread the mortar mix over the one side of the planter. Think like frosting a cake. That's kind of like what it is. Then I took various sized slices of cork and put them into place on the newly applied mortar, using the mortar as the glue per se, securing them into place and then putting more mortar on top. Using the same brush that I applied the wine cork slices to the planter with, I then made these little organic swishy marks, almost like tree branches inside the mortar mix around the planter in order to give it an interesting texture. While the cork planter is drying, I went back to complete the spiral planter, which is of course the CPAP hose. Now this is a good time to make up any more mortar mache, complete the overlaying of the mache over the hose until it's aesthetically pleasing to you. This is a good time to check out the rest of the planter to make sure that everything is covered and looks aesthetically pleasing. Now the third planter, we're going to mix the mortar mix once again, and this will be thick like a brownie batter. Now using these strips of paper, we're going to create texture using that paper. You're going to dip the crumpled paper into the mortar mix, and you're going to place on the planter. This is a very easy method. You can do large planters like this. Any one of these methods, you can do any size planter, and the texture that it gives it is quite pleasing. I used the entire planter as my canvas, covering it from top to bottom with the paper. More in some areas, it was thicker in some areas than in others. Go around the entire piece until you're satisfied. As a reminder, when the piece is dry, make sure you go over the piece once again to see that everything is completely covered and to your liking. When all of your planters are completely dry, it's time to use a sealer. Wherever you have the mortar, this is very important. I used this particular one, but there are many more on the market that are just as good. Personally, I feel like finishing off the interior truly gives the planter a completed look. It gives the piece a finished, competent, professional look. Now you don't have to do that, that's up to you, but personally that's what I like to do. And now this is the time to go over the piece and give it a once over and to see that the overall texture and appearance is what you want. As I am not painting my pieces, I gave mine several coats. If you're going to paint your planters, use a good outdoor paint and then seal. Thank you so much for joining me. Have an amazing day.